remembered for in the game of poker or for your life? What is going to be what do you want your legacy to be?
Not one name is as synonymous with the game of poker as the name of Doyle Brunson, an absolute poker legend who in his star-studded career retired as a two-time World Series of Poker champion and as the first player to ever win $1 million in payouts. However, there was always something else for him, always bigger fish to catch. And in the spirit of a true poker player, the Texas Dolly always sought more, even if it would cost him everything. Doyle Brunson was deeply involved at every stage of poker development, from the seedy underground poker rings to the first 1970s World of Poker Championship. If it was poker related, Doyle was there. Brunson would get his start playing poker after work in the 1950s. During this time, the only games he'd play would be illegal backroom games in the worst parts of Texas. It was risky, but he liked it, and he was very, very good at it. One night, Doyle would make his entire month's salary in a single game of poker, and from then on, he would quit his job and start playing poker full-time. He would then be world-renowned for his mastery of the game, and that would eventually attract the attention of Topeka Poker Network, who after the runaway success of gambling sites like PokerStars and Party Poker, would reach out to Doyle with a pitch he could not refuse. With Brunson's permission, they launched the site Doyle's Room in 2004. While it would never become a true rival to PokerStars or even Party Poker, in an era that saw insane demand and insane growth, even second-tier poker sites could thrive. Although Brunson never handled the day-to-day operations of Doyle's Room, he would be their #1 advertiser, bringing on some of the most prominent members of the poker community to promote the site along with himself.
I'm excited about my new card room, and once you see what we're putting on the table for Rake the Rake, I know you'll be pretty excited too.
It was easy money. Soon Doyle's Room would become an ever-present force in the online poker community, with their player count only growing more and more. In 2009, this runaway success would attract companies seeking to quickly cash in on the online poker craze, resulting in an anonymous offer to buy Doyle's Room for an impressive $235 million. Inexplicably, Doyle himself would turn this down, a refusal that would continue to haunt him into his final years.
Are poker players good businessmen?
No.
Leaving a question for all of us, including him, why would he turn this down? The sale would have made him the second most wealthiest poker player of all time by a long shot, and it was more money than he could have ever hoped to earn just by playing poker. The only direct statement from Doyle was a tweet from 2020. In it, he stated that he had hoped the website would be worth double when he was offered, seeking over $500 million. The regret of this decision was still at the forefront of his mind. As an experienced poker player, Doyle was well used to the pressure that came with handling a lot of money, making most of his winnings in the riskiest games of poker you could possibly play, both legal and illegal. Though this isn't poker, this is the real world, and there are a lot of factors that come with a deal of this size. He was a poker player first and a businessman a distant second, and that can be clearly seen in his choice to stake it out. To put it simply, Doyle choked, and like many others, this site would soon become worthless. Had he been a little bit more aware of how things were playing behind the scenes, he could have avoided his biggest regret. Flashback to 2003. Online poker saw a complete resurgence, with many of the top sites rapidly increasing in player count. At its peak, the largest site was hosting tournaments with over 200,000 contestants. This period was known as the poker boom, and many, including Doyle Brunson, were keen on getting a slice of that pie. But no one wanted that slice more than the United States government. While professional poker players saw the poker boom as an exciting time, with the internet breathing in new life to their favorite pastime, all lawmakers saw was gambling, and a whole lot of it. The poker boom saw hundreds of companies based out of the US making billions of dollars off of United States citizens and not paying a single dollar in taxes for it. This was too big to continue without government involvement. It didn't take long for members of Congress to see what was happening, and they sought to continue the time-honored congressional pastime of limiting gambling as much as possible. Rulings before this had prohibited the use of the internet for sports betting for similar reasons. The only thing that kept this bill from lumping in online gambling was a lack of clear definitions. However, that didn't stop many states from adopting anti-online gambling laws independently throughout the early 2000s. Lobbyist Jack Abramoff would do his best to hold off further bills as much as possible until he was inevitably sentenced to 6 years in federal prison for corruption. With Jack's absence, 2006 became the new year for gambling legislature. Congress would dig up the remains of a previous bill, the Internet Gambling Prohibition Act, and use it as a framework to purpose the Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act, or UIGEA. Despite being a near unanimous decision, the history of the UIGEA is very dodgy to say the least. The act would be tacked on to the end of the Safe Port Act, a bill that was completely unrelated to gambling and was only included in the Safe Port Act a month before the bill would be signed into law. Many congressmen even admitted to not being familiar with the internals of the UIGEA in any way, shape, or form. The law would just barely meet deadlines and would be rushed on the last day before Congress would adjourn for the 2006 election, being signed by President George W. Bush on October 13th of that year.
Now watch this drive.
Critics of the law would continue to detest it, claiming that it would do just as well to turn people away from online gambling as prohibition turned people away from alcohol. Despite this, UIGEA did indeed kill the popularity of online poker overall, causing many sites to take the business out of the US, though a few remained, most notably PokerStars, Full Tilt Poker, and Sirius. These sites lobbied for an extension of the bill, and against all odds, they would continue to see an uptick in users, with over 50,000 players flocking to virtual tables on the busiest days. It was a popular belief amongst the poker sites still operating in the US that at some point the law would be rewritten to allow the business to operate, possibly contributing to Doyle Brunson's reluctance to sell. Unfortunately, as their extension expired, so did their luck. The United States versus Scheinberg was a landmark case that would decide the fate of online poker as we know it. The U.S. Department of Justice found the big three poker sites, PokerStars, Full Tilt Poker, and Sirius, violated the UIGEA, committing bank fraud and money laundering to find a way around this. Sadly, this time there would be no aces up their sleeves, as the only defenses they had was that they believed the law didn't properly cover poker, a defense that would be swiftly debunked in court. The owner of the top poker sites in the US would all be sentenced to years in prison, while the government figured out what to do with their assets. Soon, the results of this case would become public and enforceable, and that day came to be known as Black Friday, a date that lives in infamy among online poker enthusiasts. Though top sites still had some wiggle room and were able to be reworked within the heavy hand of the Department of Justice, smaller sites weren't as lucky. Black Friday had far-reaching consequences for the entire online poker community. The only bustling industry was now plagued with legal uncertainties, shattered reputations, and a sharp decline in player trust. In a post-Black Friday landscape, many players were completely locked out of their earnings without warning, with many more players' entire bank accounts being frozen during the scandal. The few online poker enthusiasts left unscathed were stuck scavenging for new platforms to continue their passion, with no clear answer on if or when this would be repeated on other sites. Like critics had feared, it didn't turn away hardcore gamblers from searching for these sites. It only made it more difficult to do so without the eye of the law. The government would quickly assist in the reconstruction of many sites, this time under strict government regulation. With the most wild poker enthusiasts, this fallout meant more than just the loss of a couple sites. It signified the end of an era. The end of a time when online poker flourished and players could engage in games free of legal scrutiny. For Doyle Brunson, however, he never really cared too much for online poker, always preferring poker in person over anything else.
Do you like playing poker on the internet? I mean, I know it's not possible right now, but I know that you were playing, right?
Not very much.
Though of course, he'd still get burned in this decision. In May 2011, Doyle's room was seized by the United States government. At that moment, Doyle's $235 million offer became a $0 offer, making it, in terms of poker bets, the biggest net loss in his entire career. In the end, it doesn't matter how well you play. The house always wins. To avoid a possible lengthy jail sentence, the godfather of poker would immediately cut ties with the Doyle's room. And though he would continue to earn impressive wins after this blowout, he would still mourn what could have been until his death in 2023. When you take great risks, you should expect great fumbles. Even when Doyle knew all the cards, he couldn't have prepared himself for the unpredictability of life. Let his experience serve as a harrowing reminder to be more careful handling money, on and off the poker table.